Hello, beautiful Libra. As August 22 and 23 unfold, something within you may begin to feel different, as though the surface of a quiet lake is finally moving enough to reveal what has been beneath it all along. You may be approaching a moment of greater clarity around what feels balanced in your life and what you have been holding together simply because you were afraid of what might happen if you stopped. The shift may not arrive as one dramatic event. It may begin as a realization, a conversation, a feeling you can no longer dismiss, or a quiet recognition that you are ready to value yourself differently. Lately, you may have wondered why you can give so much, try so hard, and still feel as though something essential is missing. You may have been doing what seems reasonable, keeping the peace, considering everyone else's perspective, waiting for the right moment, and yet still wondering why the reward never feels equal to the effort. What may need attention now is not your ability to try harder, but your emotional alignment with what you say you want. If part of you longs for deeper love, greater stability, clearer direction, or more meaningful success, while another part quietly expects disappointment, that inner contradiction can keep you circling the same choices. There is nothing wrong with you for having learned to protect yourself that way, but these days invite you to become more honest about what you are willing to keep negotiating away just to preserve a sense of peace. Instead of pretending everything is already perfect, begin noticing what is already nourishing you, where love is genuinely being returned, where your efforts are appreciated, and where your life feels more spacious when you stop forcing an outcome. Gratitude can still be powerful here, but for Libra, it becomes less about convincing yourself that everything is wonderful and more about recognizing what is real, reciprocal, and worthy of your attention. Maybe you are facing a decision you have delayed because neither option seems completely comfortable. Perhaps you've been weighing every possible consequence, trying to make the choice that keeps everyone satisfied, while quietly setting your own needs aside. Yet that discomfort may be showing you where an old compromise has outlived its purpose. You are not being asked to become harder or less considerate. You are being asked to remember that true harmony does not require you to disappear inside someone else's expectations. Think of this as emotional recalibration, the subtle adjustment that happens when a scale has been carrying weight unevenly for too long. If your ideas about love, success, or belonging have been shaped by fear of rejection or the need to be approved of, you now have an opportunity to choose from a steadier place. Your presence speaks before you explain yourself, and people often respond to the relationship you have with your own worth long before they understand your reasons. What draws healthier circumstances toward you is not a perfect image, a polished life, or the ability to please everyone, but the quiet consistency between what you feel, what you communicate, and what you are willing to accept. So be mindful of the tone you use with yourself. When you say, "I am ready," let it mean that you are ready to participate in your own life with greater honesty, not that you have every answer figured out. And if something feels unsettled across August 22 and 23, don't immediately assume that you have made a mistake. Sometimes uncertainty appears when an old arrangement is losing its hold and a more truthful choice is beginning to take shape. Keep your attention on what matters to you, but allow the path toward it to change if your understanding changes. Wake up remembering what is already good. Let yourself laugh when a carefully planned moment takes an unexpected turn, and allow other people to misunderstand you without rushing to prove your intentions. You do not have to explain every choice simply because someone else is uncomfortable with it. Keep building that quieter confidence, the kind that does not need applause to remain steady. And remember that balance is not about making every side of your life perfectly equal at every moment. You, Libra, are learning to become the meeting place between compassion and self-respect. Your life can change as you become more willing to recognize what is reciprocal, release what continually asks you to shrink, and choose what allows you to remain fully yourself. So don't rush yourself, but don't keep postponing what you already know. Follow what feels honest, and when doubt returns, come back to what is real rather than letting fear make the decision for you. The deeper transformation here is not simply getting what you once hoped for. It is becoming clear enough to recognize what truly belongs in your life when it appears. Take this message gently, Libra, and allow your intuition to keep what feels meaningful while letting the rest pass without pressure. Across August 22 and 23, this reading looks at the themes surrounding love, money, physical well-being, and family relationships. But beneath all of them is one deeper question. Where in your life are you creating genuine harmony? And where are you simply trying to keep everything from becoming uncomfortable? Before you look outward for answers, notice the small feelings, pauses, and reactions that may already be showing you where something needs to be brought back into balance. There is also a symbolic color for this reading, soft rose gold. Think of it as an image rather than a prediction. A warm shade that represents self-respect without hardness, affection without self-abandonment, and the kind of emotional clarity that allows you to care about others without losing sight of yourself. Libra, you may be realizing that some of the smallest details in your behavior carry more weight in your relationships than you once thought. A delayed response, a promise you make too quickly, an apology you avoid, or advice you give without really listening can seem minor to you, while leaving a very different impression on someone who cares about you. This is where empathy becomes important, not as another reason to criticize yourself, but as an invitation to become more aware of how your choices land on other people. You are capable of being deeply considerate, yet there may be moments when you agree simply because saying no feels uncomfortable, or when you offer half of yourself to something because you already know your heart is somewhere else. Your authenticity matters, but authenticity does not mean ignoring the effect your actions have on people you love. Sometimes being honest requires more courage than being agreeable, especially when you know someone deserves a clear answer instead of another excuse. As August 22 and 23 unfold, consider doing a few things differently. If you have recently moved through stressful circumstances and feel as though your usual sense of direction has become harder to access, don't pressure yourself to solve everything at once. Your ability to see several sides of a situation is valuable, but it can also leave you standing at the crossroads longer than necessary. Let your thoughts settle before you commit yourself, and don't promise more than you can genuinely carry, whether the subject is work, love, family, or another responsibility that has been asking for your attention. At the same time, don't confuse patience with waiting forever, and don't confuse decisiveness with forcing an outcome. There is a middle ground where you can allow people to have their own timing while still being honest about what you need. This is part of what balance may mean for you now. Instead of replaying every difficult conversation or imagining every possible consequence, step back far enough to notice what is already working, what is quietly growing, and which relationships leave you feeling more like yourself rather than less. The sun brings an image of clarity returning after a period when too many possibilities may have clouded your view. Rather than promising that every difficulty has suddenly disappeared, this card can represent your ability to see the situation more honestly and respond from a steadier place. You may begin to recognize an opportunity, a relationship, or even a personal strength that was difficult to appreciate while you were busy trying to make everything fit together. The warmth of the sun is especially meaningful here because it asks you to let yourself be seen without constantly adjusting your image to match what everyone else expects. The Six of Wands then speaks to recognition, but for you, that recognition does not have to mean standing above everyone else. It can be the quieter satisfaction of realizing that your effort has mattered, that your contribution has been noticed, or that you have finally reached a point where you no longer need to prove your worth through constant accommodation. Whether this touches your career, a creative pursuit, a personal goal, or an important relationship, the deeper victory comes from becoming more comfortable with what you genuinely want and allowing that desire to have a place in your life. The Lovers brings the conversation closer to the heart. Rather than focusing only on whether someone is attracted to you or whether a person from the past might return, this card asks you to look at the quality of the connection itself. Are you being chosen as fully as you are choosing someone else? Is there room for honesty, mutual effort, and emotional responsibility? For those navigating distance, uncertainty, or a changing relationship, the Lovers can symbolize a meaningful choice about how you want to participate in love, while your own growth may naturally change the kind of connection you are willing to accept. Justice carries particular symbolic resonance for Libra, but its message should be understood as balance rather than guaranteed punishment or reward. It asks you to look clearly at what has been said, what has been done, what has been promised, and whether the exchange between people is actually fair. Situations that once felt confusing may become easier to understand when you stop trying to make every side of the story comfortable. And if someone has taken your kindness for granted, the most important shift may not be watching them face consequences, but realizing that you no longer have to keep participating in a dynamic that leaves you depleted. The star gently follows with a reminder to keep nurturing your own direction, your hopes, your ambitions, and the parts of yourself that exist beyond any relationship. Its message is less about waiting for a perfect future, and more about restoring trust in your ability to move towards something meaningful after uncertainty has worn you down. New connections, opportunities, or changes in direction may become easier to recognize when you are no longer measuring every possibility by whether it will keep everyone else satisfied. Sometimes the clearest path appears when you stop asking which choice will create the least disturbance and begin asking which choice feels most honest. And as you move through these days, remember to bring that same awareness into your physical well-being. Pay attention to your body's signals, especially if stress has caused you to neglect regular meals, rest, hydration, or reasonable routines. You do not need to become rigid with yourself. The message is simply to avoid turning emotional imbalance into physical excess. Give yourself the same consideration you so naturally extend to other people, because caring for your own well-being is also part of learning what genuine balance feels like. Enjoy what you enjoy, Libra, but let moderation remain part of the experience rather than something you only remember after you have gone too far. If meals have been irregular, or you have been reaching for comfort more often than usual, give your body a little more consideration. Instead of treating every craving as something you have to follow, you do not need strict rules, guilt, or an endless list of things you should and should not be doing. Simply notice what leaves you feeling nourished and what leaves you feeling heavy, restless, or depleted. These small choices may seem ordinary, but they can become another quiet way of practicing the balance you are trying to create. Emotionally, learning to listen to yourself before your body has to ask more loudly for your attention. When it comes to work, your sense of responsibility can be one of your greatest strengths, especially when you believe in what you are contributing and feel that your efforts matter to something larger than yourself. But there may be moments when dissatisfaction quietly builds, and instead of addressing it directly, you begin weighing every possible reason to stay, leave, wait, or try something different. You might notice yourself making one more compromise, overlooking one more frustration, or telling yourself that things will feel better if you simply give them a little more time. Across August 22nd and 23, ask yourself whether you are genuinely committed to the path in front of you, or simply accustomed to carrying it because changing direction would require an uncomfortable decision. You do not have to abandon stability just because something feels imperfect, because every worthwhile path will have moments that test your patience. But stability should support your growth rather than quietly becoming a place where your effort is continually overlooked or your potential remains underused. Look for work that respects your abilities, gives you room to communicate, and allows the exchange between what you contribute and what you receive to feel fair. If you are searching for employment, persistence still matters, but so does discernment. Instead of sending yourself in every possible direction, simply because you feel pressure to do something, refine your approach, strengthen the way you present your value, and look for environments where your ability to understand people, negotiate thoughtfully, and create cooperation can genuinely serve you. Your financial life carries a similar lesson. Rather than thinking only in terms of sudden abundance or waiting for circumstances to magically become easier, consider where your money, time, and attention are actually going, and whether those choices reflect what matters to you now. Sometimes a financial decision is also an emotional decision, especially when spending is connected to comfort, appearance, belonging, or the desire to make life feel more beautiful for a moment. An unexpected conversation, a useful connection, a creative idea, or recognition for something you already do well could open a possibility worth exploring. But you do not have to chase every opportunity simply because it appears promising, or because saying no feels like you might be missing something. Your ability to see different sides of a situation can help you make thoughtful financial decisions, provided you do not let too many possibilities keep you from choosing anything at all. Give yourself permission to narrow the field, because clarity often arrives after you stop trying to keep every door open simultaneously. Focus on one or two priorities that genuinely support the life you are trying to build, and let smaller intentional decisions create momentum over time rather than expecting one dramatic change to solve everything at once. Real prosperity is not only about having more, it is also about knowing what deserves your resources, recognizing where your energy is being returned, and asking whether the life you are maintaining actually reflects your values, instead of simply reflecting what other people expect from you. And then we come to love, where this message becomes especially personal for you, Libra. You may love deeply, but your understanding of love can sometimes become intertwined with the desire to keep the relationship peaceful, beautiful, or emotionally balanced. Even when something important inside you remains unspoken, you may instinctively soften your words, wait for the right moment, or convince yourself that a small discomfort is easier to carry than the uncertainty a completely honest conversation might create. Take some time to understand what partnership actually means to you, because the clearer you become about your needs, boundaries, emotional values, and the kind of effort you are willing to give, the easier it becomes to recognize a connection built on genuine reciprocity rather than simply attraction or the comfort of being wanted. If you are getting to know someone, allow the relationship to reveal itself naturally rather than trying to decide too quickly where it is going. Notice whether curiosity moves in both directions, whether conversations feel like an exchange rather than an interview, whether effort is returned without you having to request it repeatedly, and whether you can be honest without feeling that honesty will disturb everything between you. You do not need to turn every promising connection into a definition before it has had time to breathe. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is remain present enough to notice what the other person consistently shows you. If you're already in a committed relationship, August 22nd to the 23 may bring greater awareness of any emotional routine that has quietly become predictable. You may want more warmth, playfulness, affection, or simply a sense that you and your partner are meeting each other again, instead of moving through familiar motions. Perhaps you will feel drawn to create a little more life between you, whether that means going somewhere together, sharing music, laughing over something simple, cooking together, or finally having a conversation you have both been postponing. Small gestures can sometimes reveal more than dramatic declarations, especially when they come from a genuine desire to reconnect, rather than from fear that the relationship has become too quiet. But remember that intimacy cannot be created by one person alone, and your willingness does not automatically mean your partner will be in the same emotional place at the same moment. Let that difference breathe without immediately turning it into rejection or disappointment, because sometimes the healthiest form of love is knowing when to reach towards someone with an open heart and when to give them enough room to choose freely and sincerely to meet you halfway. If you are single, there is nothing wrong with making your interest known when someone genuinely catches your attention. You do not have to sit quietly and wait for another person to make the first move simply because you are afraid of appearing too eager, but pursuing a connection does not mean carrying it by yourself either. Let the other person show you through their actions as well as their words, whether they are willing to meet you somewhere in the middle. Because healthy attraction becomes much more meaningful when you are not constantly wondering whether you're the only one keeping it alive. If you have been talking with someone recently and you can feel yourself becoming hopeful, allow yourself to enjoy that feeling without immediately turning it into a story you have to force into existence. Because the most encouraging sign for you is not simply chemistry or excitement, but the quiet evidence that effort, curiosity, affection, and attention are being returned. Your family life may also begin to feel softer across August 22 and 23, particularly if recent tension has left everyone a little guarded or careful about what they say. Your own growth can subtly change the atmosphere around you, especially when you stop trying to solve every disagreement before everyone has had the chance to express what they actually feel. Sometimes harmony does not come from finding the perfect words or convincing two sides to agree. Sometimes it begins when you allow a difficult conversation to breathe without immediately stepping in to smooth every rough edge. Old patterns around communication independence or keeping the peace may become easier to recognize, giving you a chance to respond differently rather than automatically stepping into the familiar role of mediator, peacemaker, or the person who quietly absorbs the tension so everyone else can move on. You have a natural ability to understand several perspectives at once, Libra, and that can be a beautiful gift within your family. You may notice what someone means even when they cannot quite explain themselves, and you may instinctively understand why one person reacted the way they did while also seeing the other person's side. But understanding everyone does not mean you have to carry everyone's emotions, and maintaining harmony should never require you to disappear from the conversation or repeatedly silence your own needs. Let your boundaries become part of the relationship instead of treating them as something that might disturb it, because genuine closeness has room for honesty, laughter, disagreement, difference, and the occasional uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the strongest family bond is not created by everyone feeling the same way, but by knowing you can be honest with one another and still remain connected afterward. There may be moments when your emotional energy feels somewhat uneven, so give yourself permission to slow down before reacting. When you feel pulled between several choices, bring some structure to the situation instead of allowing every possibility to speak at the same volume. And ask yourself which option actually reflects your values rather than simply which one creates the least immediate discomfort. You do not have to make every decision perfectly, and you certainly do not need unanimous approval before trusting your own judgment. One especially meaningful development could come through trusting someone who has earned that trust, perhaps leading to an idea, collaboration, or shared opportunity that reminds you how much can happen when you do not feel responsible for doing everything alone. There is a difference between being independent and refusing support, and learning that difference may become surprisingly important for you. At the same time, keep a thoughtful hand on your finances. You may feel tempted to spend more than you intended, especially if buying something creates a temporary sense of pleasure, comfort, beauty, or social ease. Before allowing that momentary feeling to decide for you, pause and notice what is actually underneath the desire, because sometimes spending is less about wanting an object and more about wanting to feel rewarded, included, secure, or in control. August 22 and 23 are better used for remembering that freedom also comes from knowing your limits and being comfortable enough with yourself to say, this is what I can genuinely afford, and this is what I'm choosing to prioritize. Before saying yes to another expense, ask whether you genuinely want it or whether you are trying to maintain an image, satisfy someone else, keep up with a certain lifestyle, or avoid the temporary discomfort of saying no. The same principle applies to promises and responsibilities. If you have agreed to help someone but now realize you cannot realistically follow through, do not allow uncertainty to stretch the situation into something heavier than it needs to be. You may be tempted to keep postponing the conversation because you hope another solution will appear, or because disappointing someone feels more uncomfortable than carrying the promise a little longer. But silence rarely makes the situation easier. A simple, honest message can be more respectful than silence. Explain what has changed, apologize if necessary, and let the other person know where you stand, rather than continuing to hope the problem will somehow resolve itself. Being honest about your limits does not make you unreliable. Sometimes it is precisely what allows other people to make their own plans with clarity. If you are a student, concentration may require a little more intention than usual, rather than judging yourself because you do not feel motivated or assuming that a distracted mind means you are incapable of learning. Change the way you approach the material and make the process more active. You might listen to relevant audio, explain a concept aloud as though you are teaching someone else. Turn a difficult subject into smaller questions, or break your study time into manageable sections that feel easier to enter. The goal is not to demand perfect focus from yourself or force your mind into a state it is resisting, but to find a practical doorway back into the work so that a temporary lack of motivation does not become a reason to abandon something important to you. As for compatibility, The strongest connections are less about declaring that one sign is guaranteed to be perfect for you, and more about noticing what each interaction brings out in you. Aries may bring directness, courage, and momentum, encouraging you to stop weighing every possibility and simply act when something feels worth pursuing. Leo can encourage warmth, confidence, generosity, and a willingness to enjoy the moment without analyzing every emotional detail, while another Libra may understand your instinct to consider several sides before making a choice and may naturally recognize the importance of fairness and mutual effort. Each dynamic has something different to teach you about balance and reciprocity, and even a challenging interaction can reveal something useful about your own patterns. What matters most is whether the connection allows you to remain yourself while still making room for another person, because real compatibility is not about losing your individuality inside a relationship. It is about discovering that both people can have space and still choose to meet. Libra, as you move through August 22nd and 23, let this message sit with you gently rather than treating it as a script for what must happen. You do not need to search for proof that every prediction is unfolding exactly as described, because the more valuable question is what these themes help you notice about your own choices, relationships, habits, and emotional needs. Astrology can offer symbols to reflect on, but the choices that shape your relationships, your work, your money, and your sense of peace still belong to you. If something here resonates, take what feels meaningful and leave what does not. And if you would like to support the channel, you can do so by leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on notifications for future readings. Thank you for spending this time here and for bringing your own perspective into this space. Your support helps create a community where these conversations can continue with openness, curiosity, and respect, and where different experiences can exist without everyone needing to interpret the message in exactly the same way. May these days bring you a little more clarity about what deserves your energy, a little more courage to speak honestly when something needs to be said, and a steadier sense of balance as you continue choosing what feels genuinely right for you. And as you notice where life is asking you to give, receive, pause, or move forward, may you remember that keeping the peace is most meaningful when you are still able to remain fully present within it.